Welcome to my channel ExposedSecrets. Your one click means everything to me. Please don't forget to subscribe. Thank you. I'm Daniel, the man who thought he knew everything about his life until the cameras I installed told me otherwise. It started with unease. My wife, Claire, had been coming home later than usual. She smiled less, kept her phone face down, and whenever I asked, her answers were vague. She told me work was demanding, that deadlines never seemed to end. I wanted to believe her. For nearly 10 years, Claire had been my partner, my comfort, my best friend. But doubt began to coil inside me like a tightening rope. One evening, while she was at her sister's, I acted on impulse. I bought a set of small, hidden cameras, no bigger than coins, and placed them around our home, in the living room, in the kitchen, even in the hallway near our bedroom. It felt wrong, like I was betraying the trust we had built, but I justified it to myself. If there was nothing to hide, then the cameras would show me just that. Peace of mind, I told myself. The first few nights, I found nothing unusual. Claire would move around the house, tired, sometimes pouring herself wine, sometimes watching television alone. I almost removed the cameras, ashamed of my suspicion. But on the fourth night, everything changed. That evening I sat in my study, staring at the small screen linked to the cameras. Claire had come home at her usual late hour. She placed her bag on the counter, loosened her hair, and looked anxious. I watched as she glanced over her shoulder, as though expecting someone. Then, after a few minutes, the front door opened. A man stepped inside. My heart stopped. He wasn't someone I recognized. Tall, dark hair, wearing a fitted jacket. Claire didn't look startled, she looked relieved. She walked straight to him, her body softening as if she had been waiting for him all along. I leaned closer to the screen, my pulse hammering. They didn't kiss. They didn't even touch. But the way they stood together in the living room, whispering, their voices too low for the camera to catch, tore at me. Claire's hand moved to her necklace, a nervous gesture I knew too well. The man spoke, and she nodded quickly, like she was agreeing to something urgent. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, Claire led him toward the kitchen. They stood side by side, close but not touching, speaking in hushed tones. Then he pulled something from his jacket, a small black envelope. He slid it across the counter toward her. She froze. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. She opened it just enough to peek inside, then pressed it against her chest as though it contained her very breath. I had never seen my wife look like that, terrified, yet strangely determined. The man placed a hand on her arm. For a moment, I thought she would break down, that she would lean into him. But she didn't. Instead, she whispered something, and he nodded before walking back toward the door. I stared at the screen as Claire stood alone in the kitchen, clutching that envelope. My world tilted. Who was he? What was in that envelope? Why was my wife hiding it from me? I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. All I knew was that the woman I thought I knew, the life I believed was steady, had shifted beneath my feet. And then, just as I was about to shut the screen off, Claire did something that froze my blood. She walked straight to our bedroom closet, pushed aside her dresses, and slid the black envelope into a hidden compartment in the wall. That was when I realized, whatever secret my wife was keeping, it wasn't small. It was big enough to hide. Big enough to destroy us. And I had no idea if I was ready to find out the truth. But I couldn't look away. She slid the black envelope into a hidden compartment in the wall. My breath caught. That hiding spot was one I never knew existed. I had built this home with Claire, yet in all these years, she had kept a secret space untouched by my knowledge. How long had she been using it? What else could be buried there, unseen? I leaned back in my chair, my chest tight. The screen glowed in the dim light of my study, showing Claire pacing the room after concealing the envelope. She pressed her palms to her face, as though fighting tears, then sank onto the bed. She stayed there for a long while, motionless. Before finally lying down and turning off the lamp, I sat frozen long after the house grew still. My mind spun in a storm of questions. Who was that man? What was inside the envelope? And most of all, why hadn't she told me? The next morning, I forced myself to act normal. At breakfast, I studied Claire's face. She smiled faintly, asked if I wanted more coffee, but her eyes carried a weight I could no longer ignore. I thought about confronting her right then, demanding answers, but a colder thought kept me silent. If she had chosen to hide it, then she wasn't ready to tell me. And if I pushed too hard, she might retreat further. So instead, I pretended. I kissed her cheek before leaving for work, even though suspicion burned inside me. But the moment I was alone again, I opened the surveillance feed and replayed the footage from last night. Over and over, I watched the man step inside, watched the exchange, watched the envelope disappear into the wall. Each time I hoped I might notice some detail I had missed, a slip of expression, a clue, anything. By the third replay, something caught my eye. As the man handed her the envelope, a corner of paper slipped out. Not a bill, not a letter. It looked like a photograph. My pulse quickened. The rest of the day blurred. I barely remembered driving home. When Claire greeted me, I could hardly look at her without imagining the hidden compartment behind her dresses. Every word she spoke sounded different to me, layered, guarded, perhaps even rehearsed. That night, after she fell asleep, I crept into the bedroom. My heart thundered so loudly I feared it might wake her. Carefully, I slid open the closet and moved the line of dresses she had so carefully arranged. My hand traced the wall until I felt it, the faintest groove. A panel. Almost invisible. I hesitated. This was my wife. The woman I had promised to trust and cherish. But trust had already cracked, and secrets now lived between us. Slowly, I pressed the panel. It shifted open with a soft click. There it was, the envelope. Black, smooth, sealed. My fingers trembled as I held it. The weight was heavier than paper should be, as though the truth inside could crush me. I almost tore it open right there in the closet, but fear stopped me. What if she woke up? What if she caught me? I slid the envelope back into place, closed the panel, and returned to bed. I lay awake all night, staring at the ceiling, consumed by the knowledge that a secret was buried in my own home, and I was too afraid to face it. The following day, something happened that made my fear sharper. I came home earlier than usual. Claire wasn't expecting me. Through the window, I saw her in the living room, standing with that same man. But this time, he wasn't holding an envelope. He was holding her hand. From outside the window, my entire body froze. My wife, Claire, and the mysterious man stood only inches apart, their hands locked as though they shared something I couldn't understand. It wasn't the grip of strangers, nor the passion of lovers. It was something in between. A bond I had no name for. I ducked lower, hidden by the edge of the curtain, my pulse hammering in my ears. I wanted to storm inside, to demand answers, to pull her hand free from his. But a heavier instinct pinned me where I was, the need to. No more before I revealed myself. Through the glass, I saw Claire whispering, her lips moving fast, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. The man's jaw tightened as he listened, then he gave a slow nod. He squeezed her hand gently, like he was offering comfort. Then he reached into his jacket again, this time pulling out not an envelope, but a folded photograph. He pressed it into her free hand. I could only see the back of the photo, but Claire's reaction was enough. She staggered back, covering her mouth with a trembling hand. She looked as though the ground had opened beneath her. The man stepped forward quickly, steadying her by the arm. I clenched my fists. The sight of another man touching her, even in comfort, set fire to the doubt already burning inside me. And then Claire said something I couldn't hear, but her expression etched itself into my memory. It was the look of someone cornered between fear and duty. She pressed the photograph to her chest and shook her head, as if refusing whatever he had suggested. A long silence stretched between them. Finally, the man let her hand go. He glanced toward the door, then back at her, his face shadowed by something grim. He left without another word. I stayed crouched, breathless, until I was sure he was gone. Then, forcing calm into my shaking body, I entered through the front door, as though nothing had happened. Claire was standing in the middle of the living room, the photograph still clutched tightly in her hand. When she saw me, she jolted like a child caught misbehaving. She shoved the photo into her pocket before I could glimpse its face. "You're home early," she said, her voice uneven. I smiled faintly, though my insides twisted. "Thought I'd surprise you." She nodded too quickly, avoiding my eyes. "That's nice." The rest of the evening passed in fragments. I watched her every movement, every nervous glance toward the bedroom, every time her hand brushed the pocket where she had hidden the photograph. I wanted to confront her right then, but my fear of her answer kept me silent. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat once again in the glow of my hidden cameras, replaying the scene I had just witnessed. The footage confirmed it all: the hand-holding, the photograph, her fear. But the worst part wasn't what I saw, it was what I didn't see. The camera angle hadn't captured the face of the photograph. For the next 2 days, Claire acted as though nothing had happened. She laughed lightly, cooked dinner, even kissed me goodnight. But it was all too careful, too deliberate. She was covering something, and I was drowning in the silence between us. On the 3rd day, I made my choice. I couldn't keep pretending. If she wouldn't tell me the truth, I would uncover it myself. That night, once she drifted into deep sleep, I crept back into the closet. My hands shook as I opened the hidden compartment again. The black envelope was still there, untouched. But I wasn't searching for the envelope this time. I was searching for the photograph. I checked her pockets while she slept, careful not to wake her. Nothing. I searched the drawers, the nightstand, even beneath the mattress. Still nothing. But then, as I turned back toward the closet, I noticed something: her handbag on the floor, half open. And peeking from within, the corner of a folded photograph. I reached in, pulled it out slowly, and unfolded it under the dim light. What I saw made my blood run cold. It was Claire standing beside the very same man. But they weren't alone. Between them stood a young boy who looked no older than 8. And his eyes looked exactly like mine. The photograph slipped from my trembling hands. My mind refused to believe what my eyes told me. A boy, 8 years old, with my eyes, standing between Claire and the stranger as if he belonged to them both. I picked the picture back up, staring harder, as though the truth might change if I looked long enough. The boy's smile was small and certain, but his gaze, those deep, unmistakable eyes, mirrored mine in a way no coincidence could explain. Was he my son? My chest constricted. Claire and I had no children. We had tried once, years ago, but fate had left us empty-handed. She said it wasn't meant to be, and I believed her. I never pressed, never blamed her, never doubted her love. But now this? I sank onto the bed, the photograph shaking between my fingers. Questions attacked me like sharp stones. If he was mine, why hadn't she told me? And if he wasn't, why did he look so much like me? I barely slept that night. At dawn, I slipped the photo back into her bag, exactly where I found it. My heart pounded against my ribs as though it wanted to escape me. I knew I had to confront her, yet the words lodged in my throat. Over breakfast, I studied Claire's face. She looked calm, but there was a tiredness in her eyes I hadn't noticed before. When she caught me staring, she smiled faintly and asked if everything was all right. I nodded, lying through my teeth, hiding the storm beneath my skin. That day at work, I couldn't focus. Numbers blurred on the screen. Voices droned around me. All I could see was that boy's face. My face. By evening, I couldn't wait any longer. When I walked into the house, I called Claire's name sharply. She appeared from the kitchen, drying her hands, her brows knitting at my tone. "Claire," I said, my voice unsteady. "Who is he?" Her face went pale. "Who is who?" "The boy," I whispered. "The boy in the photograph." For a moment, time seemed to stop. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Her hands trembled against the cloth she held. "Daniel." She finally breathed, her voice cracking. "You weren't supposed to see that." Her words shattered me. "Weren't supposed to see that." As if the boy's existence was a secret she had planned to bury forever. "Is he mine?" I demanded. My voice rose despite my effort to stay calm. "Tell me, Claire, is he my son?" Tears welled in her eyes. She shook her head slowly, then pressed both hands to her mouth, and in that silence, I felt my entire world tilt. "No," she whispered at last. "He isn't, but he should have been." Her words cut like a knife. My knees went weak, and I collapsed into the chair behind me. "What do you mean?" I asked hoarsely. She sat across from me, her hands twisting in her lap. For the first time in years, she looked like a stranger. "That man you saw, his name is Michael. He's someone I knew long before I met you. That boy, he's his son." Her voice broke. "But Daniel, you're right. The boy looks like you. Because Michael, he's your brother." The room spun. My brother? I hadn't seen or spoken to Michael in over a decade. We had gone separate ways after a bitter falling out, and I had buried the thought of him long ago. Now, here he was, entangled in my life again, through Claire. Through a boy who bore my eyes. "Why?" I choked out. "Why didn't you tell me?" Claire's tears finally spilled. She reached across the table, but I pulled back, my heart a storm of betrayal and disbelief. "Because," she whispered, "if I told you the truth, you would never forgive me." Her words echoed through me like a hollow bell. I stared at Claire, my wife, the woman I had trusted for nearly a decade, and I felt the ground beneath me shift again. What truth? "Claire?" My voice cracked, torn between fury and despair. "What could you possibly have done that would make me incapable of forgiving you?" She looked down, unable to meet my eyes. Her fingers twisted the cloth in her lap until it tore. "Daniel, when Michael and I met years ago, before you and I crossed paths, it was nothing serious. At least I thought it wasn't. But then," she faltered, swallowing hard, "then I met you and I chose you. I let go of everything before. I wanted our life together." I waited, my chest tight, but she didn't continue. "And the boy?" I pressed, my voice trembling. "Why does he look like me?" Her tears flowed freely now. "Because Michael came to me when his wife passed away. He said the boy Ethan needed someone to protect him. Someone he could trust. Daniel, Ethan has been in danger." "Danger?" I repeated, my mind reeling. "From what? From whom?" She shook her head desperately. "I can't tell you, not yet. If I do, you'll hate me even more. You'll hate him, and you'll never look at Ethan the same way." I slammed my fist on the table. "Claire, I already know about the envelope, about the photograph, about the compartment in the wall. Do you think I can sit here any longer drowning in secrets? You owe me the truth." She flinched at the sharpness in my voice, but her silence stretched on. At last she whispered, "If you want to know the truth, then come with me tomorrow. I'll take you to them." "Them?" I asked. Her eyes lifted slowly, filled with dread. "To Michael. And to Ethan." That night, sleep escaped me. I lay awake beside her, my body stiff with anger, my mind tangled in questions. Why had she hidden my brother from me? Why had she carried the burden of another man's child while living under my roof? And what kind of danger could an innocent boy possibly face? At dawn, Claire rose quietly, but I was already awake. Neither of us spoke as we dressed. The silence between us felt heavier than any words. By noon, we drove in tense stillness to the outskirts of town. Claire's hands gripped the wheel tightly, her knuckles pale. Finally, she pulled into a quiet street lined with old houses. She parked in front of a small, weathered home with curtains drawn tight. My breath quickened. "He's inside," Claire said softly. "Both of them." I wanted to storm in, to face Michael, to demand explanations. But as we stepped out of the car, my legs felt weak. The years of silence between us, the betrayal, the secrets, it all weighed down on me. Claire knocked gently. And after a long pause, the door opened. There he was. Michael. His hair was grayer than I remembered, his eyes sharper, but still unmistakably my brother. The air thickened between us, a decade of resentment pressing down in a single glance. Behind him, peeking nervously from the hallway, stood the boy, Ethan. And in that moment, as his wide eyes locked with mine, I felt something shift inside me. A recognition deeper than blood, deeper than betrayal. The boy wasn't just Michael's son. He was connected to me too somehow, in ways I didn't yet understand. But before I could step inside, Michael spoke in a low, guarded tone. "You weren't supposed to find out this way, Daniel. But since you have..." He hesitated, glancing at Claire. Then his gaze hardened as it fell back on me. "You need to know the truth about Ethan. He's not just my son. He's the reason your life is in danger." The words hit me harder than any blow Michael had ever given me in our bitter past. I froze in the doorway, staring at my brother, unsure whether to laugh at the absurdity or collapse under the weight of it. "My life?" I whispered. "What does a child have to do with my life?" Michael stepped aside, motioning us in. Claire walked past him with her head low, but I hesitated. Something in Michael's eyes told me that once I crossed that threshold, nothing would ever be the same. Still, I entered. The living room smelled faintly of old wood and something sterile, like medicine. Ethan stood near the window, clutching a toy car, his gaze flicking nervously between the three of us. He didn't speak, but his eyes my eyes studied me with quiet intensity. Michael sat heavily in a chair. "Daniel, you need to listen without interrupting. Because once you know, you can't unknow it." I remained standing, my fists clenched. "Then talk." He exhaled slowly. "Ethan isn't just my son. He's the last link to something far bigger. Years ago, when you and I stopped speaking, I made choices I shouldn't have. I got involved with people who promised easy money, fast gains. But they weren't just criminals, they were powerful men, the kind who used children, families, anyone, as pawns." Claire flinched at his words, but said nothing. Michael continued. "When Ethan was born, I thought I could protect him. But after his mother died, they turned their eyes on him. They believe Ethan carries something valuable, something left to him, that I can't explain here. I've been hiding him ever since." I shook my head, disbelief clawing at me. "And what does this have to do with me?" Michael's eyes met mine, hard and unflinching. "Because they know you exist. And because Ethan looks like you, they'll use that. They'll come for you, to draw me out, to get to him." My stomach turned cold. I glanced at Ethan, who now clung to Claire's hand. She stroked his hair gently, her face tight with pain. Suddenly, her secrecy, her fear, her hiding envelopes and photographs, it all began to take shape. "You should have told me," I said bitterly. "Both of you." Claire's voice broke. "I wanted to, Daniel, but I was terrified. If you knew, you'd be dragged into it. And I couldn't bear to put you in danger." The room was thick with silence. Ethan's small fingers clutched Claire tighter, as though he understood more than his young face revealed. Finally, I asked, "What was in the envelope?" Michael hesitated, then reached into a drawer and pulled out the very same black envelope I had seen days ago. He placed it on the table between us. "This," he said quietly, "is everything they're after." I stared at it, my heartbeat drumming in my ears. The envelope seemed heavier than before, as though it carried not just secrets, but my entire future. "Open it," I demanded. Michael shook his head. If you open it now, you'll be marked. They'll know it's in play. You can't imagine how closely they watch. Once you see what's inside, there's no going back. I reached for it anyway, my hand trembling over the flap. But before I could break the seal, the sound of a car screeching outside shattered the stillness. Michael jumped to his feet. Claire pulled Ethan close. My pulse spiked through the thin curtain. Headlights cut across the wall. Doors slammed. Heavy footsteps approached the house. Michael's face went pale. "It's them," he hissed. "They found us." Michael's voice carried both fury and fear. Claire pulled Ethan closer, clutching him as though her arms alone could shield him from the danger outside. My pulse thundered, my body tense, torn between disbelief and instinct. "Who are they?" I demanded, but Michael didn't answer. Instead, he rushed to the window, peeking through the curtain. His jaw tightened. They sent more than I thought. The footsteps outside grew heavier, closer. A knock rattled the door loud, commanding, not the kind of knock a neighbor gives. Ethan whimpered. Claire held him tighter. I stepped toward the table, my hand brushing the black envelope. For a split second, I considered snatching it, running, ending this nightmare by forcing the truth into daylight. But before I could act, Michael grabbed my arm. "Not that. Not now. If they know you've touched it, they won't just chase me, they'll chase you too." The knock came again, harder this time. "Michael," a voice barked, deep, cold. "We know you're in there. Don't make this worse." My breath caught. Whoever they were, they already knew his name. Michael turned to me, his face grim. "Listen, Daniel. I can't undo what I dragged into your life, but right now, you have a choice. Stay and face them with me, or take Claire and Ethan out the back, and don't look back." The thought of leaving my brother behind twisted in me. For years I had hated him. But hate felt small now compared to the storm raging at our door. Claire's voice broke through. "Daniel, please, we can't let them take Ethan. He's just a child." The banging grew louder. The door shook in its frame. Michael thrust a set of keys into my hand. "The back gate. Go, now." For a heartbeat, I froze, caught between blood and loyalty, between brother and wife. But when the door splintered with a crack, instinct took over. I grabbed Claire's arm, scooped Ethan into my arms, and rushed toward the back of the house. Behind us, Michael shouted, "If I don't make it, protect the envelope. It's the only thing that will save him." The words carved themselves into me as we stumbled out the back door into the cold night. Claire sobbed softly, her hand gripping mine as we ran across the yard. The boy's small arms wrapped tightly around my neck. We reached the gate just as voices thundered inside the house. A crash echoed, furniture overturned, glass breaking. I froze, wanting to turn back, to see what was happening to my brother. But then, a gunshot shattered the night. Claire screamed. Ethan buried his face in my shoulder. My legs moved before my mind caught up, carrying us through the gate into the shadow of the alley. We ran until my lungs burned, until my heart felt it might explode. Only when we reached the dark safety of the trees beyond the street did we stop, gasping, trembling. Claire clutched my arm, tears streaking her face. "Daniel," she whispered, "what if he's—" I shook my head, unable to hear it. I couldn't think of Michael lying lifeless on that floor. I couldn't think of the blood that might already be on my hands. Instead, I looked down at Ethan. His small face was pale, his eyes wide with terror, but behind the fear, I saw it again. That same look. My look, and as the echoes of the gunshot faded, one thought anchored itself deep in my chest. I had to protect him, no matter the cost. But when I reached into my pocket, I realized with horror that I no longer had the keys Michael had given me, nor the envelope. They were both gone. My fingers searched frantically through my pockets, but the keys and the envelope had vanished. My heart slammed against my ribs. Somewhere between the chaos of the house and our escape, I had lost the only Thing Michael said could save Ethan. Claire's breath hitched. Daniel, tell me you still have it. I don't, I whispered, my voice hollow. It's gone. Her face paled, her eyes darting toward Ethan, who clung silently to my shirt. She didn't speak, but I could see it in her expression losing. That envelope was more dangerous than the gunshot we had heard. I pulled them deeper into the trees, far from the road, until we collapsed against the roots of an old oak. My lungs burned, my thoughts spiraled. Michael's words echoed endlessly. Protect the envelope. It's the only thing that will save him. What was inside? Why was Ethan worth chasing with such force? And why did his eyes mirror mine? Claire crouched beside me, her voice low and desperate. Daniel, listen. That envelope holds proof, documents, names, accounts. The men chasing Michael, they'll do anything to get it back. Without it, they'll never stop hunting Ethan, or us. I swallowed hard, dread coiling in my stomach. Then we need to go back. I can't leave him. I can't leave Michael. Her hand gripped mine. No, if we go back now, we'll be caught. We have to keep Ethan safe first. Promise me, Daniel. I looked at the boy, his wide, fearful eyes, his small chest rising and falling against the night air. He was innocent. He didn't deserve any of this. And whether he was mine or not, he was tied to me in a way I couldn't deny. I promise, I said, though my voice cracked under the weight of it. We moved again under the cover of darkness, slipping through back roads, avoiding headlights, every step driven by fear and urgency. Hours felt like days until finally, we reached a safe house Claire had prepared, another secret she had hidden from me all along. Inside, with the doors locked and curtains drawn, silence wrapped around us. Ethan finally slept, his small body curled on the couch. Claire sat across from me, her hands trembling in her lap. I broke the quiet. Tell me everything now, Claire. No more secrets. She nodded, her face weary. Daniel. Ethan may be Michael's son, but in another life, he could have been ours. He looks like you because he carries your family's blood. And that bloodline, it's what those men want. Michael once uncovered something he shouldn't have, corruption that reached too far, too high. He hid it in Ethan's name, thinking no one would suspect, but now they know. Her voice faltered. And now that you're involved, they'll never stop chasing us. I sat back, the weight of her words crushing me. My brother's mistakes, my wife's secrets, a child's life, and my own name now tangled in a web I never chose. Outside, dawn crept into the sky, painting the horizon in pale gray. I stared at the sleeping boy, his face peaceful despite the storm that surrounded him. Something hardened inside me. I couldn't change what Claire had hidden. I couldn't undo Michael's choices. But I could make one choice now. I would protect Ethan as though he were my own. Because in the end, whether by blood, by fate, or by circumstance, he was mine to protect. And though the envelope was lost, the truth wasn't. I would find it, no matter what it cost me.